Hi, in this video we're going to talk a little bit about Waltz report grids. They've been around for a while, but we've been doing quite a lot of work on them in recent releases. So reporting grids basically allow you to bring together data from across Waltz, from all the different sections in Waltz into a single grid. Report grids are being used quite extensively for ad hoc data analysis and reporting. It's self-service, so users can define their own grids, export them, share them with other users. One of the nice things about the report grids obviously is that they're native to Waltz, so they're very simple to set up, and they also work from all the different vantage points within Waltz. So once you've got a report grid working and you're seeing data for, say, an org unit, you can use that same grid and it becomes available across all of the other aggregating viewpoints within Waltz. So you can use that same report inside app groups, inside the org unit tree, inside measurable associations, etc. Okay, so now it's time to take a quick look at report grids in more detail. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jessica, who will go into a bit more detail about what report grids are all about, and then we'll start doing a demo showing how to set these up for yourself.
Thanks, Dave. So, what are report grids? Going from the Waltz main homepage, as Dave mentioned, report grids can be found on any aggregated vantage point, so for example an org unit or an application group. So I'm just going to navigate to an org unit, and we'll see on the navigation bar on the left hand side our report section. If we select that, the report grid section will open, and we can see here on the overview tab a list of our existing report grids. So taking one of these, the structure of a report grid is as follows. Each row is a subject in Waltz, for example an application or a change initiative, and then each column is a data point for that subject, for example an involvement or an assessment against that application, or other features such as cost kinds or measurables. Looking at each of these cells, you can see the contents, either cost value or a string, and for some cells you'll notice that there's a notch in the bottom right hand corner of the cell which indicates there's additional content. For example, on this one, a description of the rating for that assessment. We'll look at these in more detail, but for now let's figure out how to create a report grid. If we scroll up to the tabs again, we can see below the grid we've just looked at, create a new report grid. By selecting this, we can enter a new grid name, demo report grid, a description for the demo, and we can choose whether the subject for this grid is going to be an application or a change initiative. In this case, let's choose application. When we create a new grid, it will helpfully take us to the column editor. It's the third tab along. On the left-hand side of the column editor, we can choose to add a new column. There's a drop-down list of all the different entity kinds that are valid for this subject kind of the grid. For example, in applications, you can choose to add application field details, for example, the asset kind of the application or the actual retirement date of the application. If we just save this report, we can see these columns start to be added to the grid below. We can also then go in and add other entities, for example, assessment definitions or involvement kinds. And I'll add a project manager. I close that and save the grid again. We'll see these columns appear below. As you pick a new entity kind, the widget should help guide you through what to do. For example, for application groups, you might want to search, and for data types, you can select from the existing tree. As we add each of these data types or other entities to the grid, we'll notice that they're added to the list of fields or columns in the center of the column editor. Using this navigation, you can either move columns up and down, which will reflect the position in the grid. So if we take project manager and move them to the bottom, and save this grid, we should see those columns rearranged with project manager taking the final column slot there. We can also edit specific details. So by clicking on the edit pencil, it opens up more details for that column, such as the usage kind, which is either none or summary. Summary, which we'll come to in a minute, means we add it to the filter list for this application grid. The rating rollup rules, these are only valid for measurables, or the display name, so we can choose an alternative name. As this is administrative, I might just shorten that to admin to save some space on the grid. As I save this report and scroll down, we should see that that column is now referred to as admin. From this list of actions, we can also choose to remove a column. And then we save the report again.
Okay. Once we're happy with a grid, we might want to share it with some other people. By default, grids are private, so it'll only be you that can see your own grids. So if we wanted to invite other people to view the grid or even collaborate with us on editing the grid, we go over to the People editor. Here we can add some more subscribers. So we add a couple of people. Let's add John. And we'll also add Oliver. You'll notice as I'm adding them, they're being added straight in as viewers. If we wanted to promote one of these people to an owner, we can just do promote to owner, and now Oliver is now an owner, which means that he can do everything that you can with the grid. So you can add columns, remove columns, etc. All the grids you have access to, either ones you've created or ones you've been invited to be a viewer or additional owner of, are available through the Overview tab. So here you can see my list of grids. So as people add me to other grids, they'll start appearing there. Once we have our grids, we may want to have a look and be able to filter the data in it. There's a filter tab here, and on the right hand side we can see the selection of filters that are available to us. Most of the column types are available for filtering, but some are not. So for things where there's a rating associated with them, like assessments or measurables, we can see the filters just breaks down stats according to each one of those, the rating outcomes. And if we click here, you can see the table below is being updated dynamically to match those filters. Of course, you can add more than one filter. So here I'm adding a couple more filters. Some of these are just simple, whether there is a value or not. So for something like involvement, where there's too many permutations to list them out, we just say, is there a value at all or not? You'll notice these numbers are updating dynamically as well. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So as we make the filter selections here, it does a kind of a projection, shows you how many things are now still visible compared to the total, which is showing in brackets. It also fades out these rating indicators, depending upon whether there's any data showing at the moment. So as we add more data in here, you'll see some of these things start appearing again. And of course, you can use combinations. By default, you may have noticed that the filters were empty when I first came to this tab. That's because when we set up the grid, we hadn't told it to use any filter columns. However, as soon as users start selecting filters, then Waltz will remember their filter choices. So if they were to refresh the screen or come back to this grid later, then the filters that they were using will be available again. If you want to quickly add ones to a filter to be a built-in filter that appears for everyone initially, then the usage kind can be set to be summary, and that will make that one a default filter for people when they first open the grid. Finally, let's talk a little bit about exports. So the data in the grid, obviously we can see it here, but there's also an export button here. So if we export, we can get the choice as usual as to whether we want it in straightforward CSV or Excel. Take Excel. In this case, actually, it'll open in LibreOffice. There we go. Open that. And we should see, let's move this into view. We can see the data is here. We hope that's been useful. If you've got any questions, then feel free to reach out to us via GitHub or on one of the mailing lists. Thank you.